Hello, my name is Prior Chad, and I'm the vicar at St. Augustine's Episcopal Parish in Tempe, Arizona. The following sermon was delivered on the last Sunday after the Epiphany, February 7th, 2016. And as is always the case in our church, on the final Sunday before Ash Wednesday, we focus on the story of Jesus' transfiguration upon the Holy Mountain. So I use this sermon, this opportunity, to reflect upon the dynamic relationship between personal spiritual experience and the common life. I hope that this sermon is enriching for you as you enter into your Lenten practices, and I pray that your Lent produces in you the promise of new life. Blessings upon you.
Let no evil talk come out of my mouth, but only what is useful for building up, as there is need, so that my words may give grace to those who hear. In the name of the Holy and Undivided Trinity. Amen. Amen. For 8 years, from 2007 until 2014, a group of us young families from this parish would embark on a weekend retreat at Chapel Rock, right around this time of year. It's amazing for me to think about how our family has changed over that time. In February of 2007, when the retreats began, our older boys were 5 and just turning 4 years old. And I doubt we even knew that our youngest was on his way. He would join us that following September. I was always the musician and liturgist for these outings, entrusted with shaping a liturgy of the hours for our time together, even though I had very little notion back then of how the daily office works. Just like Gil, to throw you in and see if you can swim. I'm not complaining, I am standing here after all. I remember one year, in 2009, when our retreat fell on this Sunday in the church year, the last Sunday after the Epiphany, which was about 2 weeks later in the calendar year than it is this year. I remember this fact because we celebrated our middle son, Ira's 6th birthday, which is on February 21st, while we were together up there at Chapel Rock. And the story of the Transfiguration provided a beautiful frame for my memory of that weekend. I can still see the glow of anticipation in Ira's nearly 6-year-old face, thrilled at the prospect of getting to celebrate his birthday with his friends in a place where they might be able to play hide and seek in the forest and have a snowball fight. I remember how his quiet joy up on the mountain that day affected us all as the retreat schedule paused and we gathered in the common room for a simple birthday party with cake and candles and singing and a few choice presents. Our church has historically celebrated the last Sunday after the Epiphany as Transfiguration Sunday, a time when we remember the revelation of Christ's glory upon the Holy Mountain, so that we may be strengthened to bear our cross as we enter Lent. But we remember the Transfiguration not only so that we can suffer gracefully through the upcoming Lenten fast. We remember the Transfiguration so that, as our collect today states so well, by beholding by faith the light of Christ's countenance, we can, through our Lenten observance, be changed into his likeness from glory to glory. This morning, I would like for us to reflect upon a central relationship I see at play in the lectionary texts we heard on this Transfiguration Sunday. This relational dynamic is between personal spiritual experience and the wider community. How does one human being's experience of God relate to the experience of the community of which they are a part? How might the wider community be changed by the one person's encounter with God? In our Hebrew scripture text from Exodus, we heard the story of Moses coming down from the mountain with a glowing face after being in God's presence, and the people were afraid to come near him. Moses was compelled to put a veil over his face so that he could deliver to the people the words of God. We see in this story that the personal spiritual experience of the leader is not for the sake of the leader, but for the sake of the community at large. Moses is given an experience on the mountain not to display what makes him exceptional, but so the whole nation could be led into its own encounter with the source of that experience. Moses stands in the tradition as the giver of the Torah, as the one who translates his profound personal experience with God into words that the wider community can engage. And encountering the presence of the living God through Holy Scripture is a primary way that we, as people of the book, have connected to the source of such profound experiences for thousands of years. In the Christian tradition, one ancient approach to reading our sacred texts understands that Holy Scripture opens to the reader who turns to the living presence of Christ while listening to the words on the page. In this method of reading, known as Lectio Divina, there's a sort of implicit contract in place. If we do our part, if we open the ear of our heart and truly listen, the Divine Spirit will speak into our life through the words of the text. But it ain't easy to remain open, to truly listen and not speak, to hear God's voice and not our own. Looking at the story of the Transfiguration, we can see all of these dynamics at play. We see how Jesus' personal experience in prayer on the mountain relates to the very different experiences of the disciples. We see that Jesus does not speak, but is spoken to by the voice of the law, represented by the figure of Moses, and by the voice of the prophets, represented by the figure of Elijah. We see that through listening to the voices of those who have communed with God in generations past, prayer changes Jesus. We see, on the other hand, that Peter speaks and does not listen. While witnessing Jesus' encounter on the mountain, rather than listening and receiving his own experience of spiritual communion, Peter seeks to assert himself into Jesus' experience in a most ineffective and unhelpful way. When the voice from the cloud says about Jesus, "Listen to him," it's offering a way forward to Peter, James, and John, and to all of us who follow the Christian path. We are called to listen rather than speak, to be still and await encounter, rather than assert ourselves through anxious action. As we prepare to enter the season of Lent, let us remember that we all have access to the riches of spiritual communion when we open the ear of our hearts to Scripture and transfigure our lives through our own encounter with the source of all profound spiritual